Thank you, Eddie. Let me start by joining my fellow Regents, Eddie, in thanking you and complimenting you on your leadership on this. I think it was 5 years ago when we had acts of hatred against some of our black students, with a fraternity doing a party that was very racist and hateful, and with a noose being found in a library. And Eddie, you were leading the Campus Climate Committee then. I stood with you on that. We went campus by campus. I saw your leadership there, and I have to say that I'm proud, Eddie, that you're taking as seriously acts of hate to our Jewish students as we had acts of hate to our black students, and as we should acts of hate to any groups of our students. Over the past year, we've heard too many stories of acts of hate to our Jewish students, and I've said acts, noticed a lot of times, because what I want to address is that the issue of First Amendment has been used by some as a smokescreen to try to back us down from taking appropriate action to stop these acts of hate. I happen to be someone that's been supportive of my ACLU for decades, since law school. Here's the Constitution I've carried around since law school. I'm one of those believers that our First Amendment is at the core of being a great democracy. I'm one of those people that believes that means that to fight for the right for Nazis to spew their hate, Klan members to spew their hate speech, because that's what First Amendment is. But First Amendment doesn't protect spray painting swastikas. First Amendment doesn't protect intimidating Jewish students. And when we hear these stories from our students and we see the growing amount of these acts, this is something that is very serious to us. I have to say, I feel that we respond with more outrage and quicker when the same acts of hate to other groups than we are to how it is our Jewish student groups. And I wonder how any of us would think, for example, when we heard from young Daniel this morning that he was told he shouldn't vote on the boycott divestment of Israel because he's Jewish and has a Jewish agenda. How would any women feel if we were told we shouldn't vote on an issue that impacts women because we have a woman's agenda, or a Latino or a Latina saying they shouldn't vote on acts that concerns Latinos, or gays, that they shouldn't vote on acts that concerns gays because they have a gay agenda? We would be rightly outraged. I'm going to return to First Amendment for a second, because with the support of faculty and chancellors, UC is doing this microaggression training, which a few months ago hit the news. And among the training that it includes is trying to sensitize faculty about how saying things like America's the land of opportunity could trigger bad feelings in some of our students, how America is a melting pot could trigger bad feelings among our students. I frankly am concerned, what does that mean to our First Amendment? If we're trying to make faculty and people on our campuses sensitive that, oh, well, be careful if you say things like America's the land of opportunity or America's a melting pot because you could be offending people, isn't that something that could infringe and chill First Amendment rights? And yet, we seem very worried over, wow, when we're approaching anti-Semitism to our Jewish students, we might be infringing on First Amendment. And I really ask my fellow regents and the chancellors to ponder why it is we seem less concerned about these acts of intimidation and hate directed at our Jewish students than we seem to be at many other things. I too am confident that with Eddie's leadership, the committee will end up coming up with good principles. But I don't believe that's enough, because a statement of principles isn't going to change the climate on each campus. You know, the students in UC that are involved in the social, Students for Justice for Palestinians, they have every First Amendment right and justification to advance what they advance. The Muslim Student Association has every First Amendment right to advance what they advance, trying to get boycott, divestment from Israel movements. But when our Jewish students want to speak up about the right of Israel to survive, when countries like Iran want to wipe them off the face of the planet and terrorist groups are threatening them all the time, somehow they're not viewed as having those same rights. And the intimidation factor is something we need to be very worried about. And no principles we issue, no matter how well written, will stop this climate from intimidation, which is happening on most of our campuses now, unless each chancellor makes a priority to look at this climate for their Jewish students as they would for their black students, their gay students, their Latino students, their Muslim students. I mean, imagine if the same boycott, divestment debates that were going on campuses were spilling over with hatred to the Muslim students. Imagine if it were Muslim students that were being told, don't vote on this because you have a Muslim agenda. Or hateful graffiti was spewed on campus about Muslim students. I really ask every chancellor and regent to search their hearts and think, would our response not be a little bit more profound and quick and outraged because of the political concerns or intolerance concerns over that? So I'm just asking everyone to search their minds and hearts and know, and yeah, Norm, I hope in January, March, whenever this happens, but we shouldn't wait for this statement for our chancellors to take actions on their campuses. I know some are, but I plead with each chancellor. We stand for a culture of a campus culture of safety and inclusion. To please take acts now, to look into what's going on. And when we teach microaggressions, well, maybe we should be teaching our students the difference between First Amendment and unprotected acts of hate. Maybe we should be, when an Israeli ambassador comes to campus to speak and there's a campaign to shout him down so he can't speak, that's the opposite of First Amendment. When a Jewish student is intimidated that maybe they shouldn't vote on something because they have a Jewish agenda, that's the opposite of First Amendment. So I too am hopeful that the committee will come up with good principles, but I don't want to wait for that. I want to please ask Janet and ask each chancellor to aggressively start looking at this now, so this intimidation and hate acts against our Jewish students stops. Thank you.